Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sportlight podcast. We're doing things a little bit differently today. For those who are watching on YouTube, we're having a roundtable discussion. I'm here with Dr. Sheldon Martin and with Brian Attridge, CEO of the Utah Youth Soccer Association, and of course, as always, with the founder of Especially for Athletes, Dustin Smith.
Welcome to the Sportlight podcast for parents, coaches, and athletes. The Sportlight refers to the time in an athlete's life when they have increased ability to affect the culture around them and the increased opportunity to learn life's lessons through sports. This podcast aims to help parents and coaches capitalize on their athletes' precious time in the Sportlight. The Sportlight podcast is brought to you by Especially for Athletes program.
Welcome to the new Especially for Athletes Roundtable series. We're going to get together with groups of people from all different backgrounds and discuss various topics. Today, we've got a great group, great panel here. We've got Brian Attridge, who is the CEO of the Utah Youth Soccer Association. They oversee soccer for, 58,000?
Yeah, nearly 60,000 kids in the state.
And that's one of the largest, if not the largest, in the country, right?
Well, we're part of the largest youth sports organization in the country, U.S. Youth Soccer, which has about 3 million kids. But we're the largest youth organization in the state of Utah.
Okay, awesome. We also have Dr. Sheldon Martin, mental health counselor, works with not just athletes, but with adults and kids of all ages on a variety of different subjects, including mental health. And my partner, Shad Martin from Especially for Athletes. So I wanted to get you guys together and just have a discussion on several topics, but I'm going to start it off by asking Brian a question. So we just sort of touched on that, nearly 60,000 soccer players, so a massive undertaking to manage that many soccer matches and schedules and things like that. You and I have talked before many times about some of the things you're seeing in the sports world that we need to do something about, and I credit you and your organization for doing such. You're doing something about it. We've been now involved with you for nearly 7, 8, 9 years with Especially for Athletes.
Close to 10.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had the chance to speak with thousands of your athletes over the years. So I commend you for doing that, Brian, and taking an effort to address some of these things. But I wanted to give you the mic here for a second. What are some of the things that you're seeing in the soccer community? Because whatever it is in soccer, I promise you it's the same in baseball and football and everything else, that's concerning to you and something that we maybe should discuss and try to do something about.
Well, first I'll give another shout out to you guys in our partnership over the last nearly 10 years. That'd be one of the first things that I'd say is our goal is to provide quality educational and developmental opportunities for our kids, and that doesn't just remain on the field and physically with what we're doing. We really want to grow our kids and provide them opportunities to become leaders, and that's what we're getting with Especially for Athletes, what we've got over the last nearly 10 years in our ODP program, and what we're doing, trying to do now with our new Utah Youth E4A Leadership Council. So Thank you, Dustin. Thank you, Shad, for everything that you guys have done for us and for our athletes, because we know that it'll make a difference in our association and our kids' experiences on the field and off the field. Apart from that, I think most recently we've got a little press recently on what we're doing as far as referee interactions and specifically referee abuse. I don't know that I have empirical data from the last 20 years, so I can't tell you definitively that it is this amount worse as far as how referees are treated. But I know more kids are playing soccer, more kids are participating in the sport, and they have more access to the internet and to video and to see what's going on. And the way referees are treated is just beyond what should be allowed. So we're really looking at that and trying to change how the culture looks at referees and their role and how they're treated and how we interact with them. So we've made some pretty drastic steps recently to try to change the culture. I mean, that's you guys talk a lot about changing culture, and that's what we're trying to do all across the board, and specifically right now with referees. So we came out with a pretty strict policy that we have a zero tolerance referee abuse policy. So if any fans of ours are crossing that line, which sometimes can be gray, and we rely on the referee to determine what that line is, and that in the referee's eyes, if they're being threatened or that line is crossed, They have the authority to stop the game and clear the field, and we will not allow that team to have spectators for the rest of the season. And we know that that's not going to be a perfect system. We know that there are going to be really good parents who are caught in the fray of that sometimes, but we feel like it's gotten so bad that we need to do something to start to change the culture. And we implemented it this last spring, and we saw very positive results, pretty quick results on how referees were being treated. Mostly they weren't being treated anyway. Everyone just shut up and stopped talking. And we have our state cup championship tournament at the end of our spring season, and it was eerie. It was eerily quiet. Like we showed up. Usually there's hundreds of fans and there's a lot of screaming and yelling. And I was driving around the soccer complex, and it kind of felt like a ghost town. And we said, you can still cheer, but be positive. Just don't address the referees. Don't be negative. Be positive. Be a good influence. And so we saw some immediate results, and we're going to work through it and hopefully see positive change. But that's probably the biggest issue we've seen right now with our kids, our coaches, and our parents' experience on the sideline is referees.
Well, I want to ask, with that, I want to ask Dr. Martin, and then I'd like Shad to follow up with some of the things you've seen in sports and really from your time playing in high school and college. But so, Dr. Martin, why do you think it is that when you're at a sporting event, we get this free card to say and do whatever we want to, and why do we feel this freedom because we've bought a ticket to say things to a referee or to an opposing player if you're at a professional venue, right? Feel like we can get away with saying things to another human being that we would never, ever say to them outside of the stadium. And why do you think parents, I'm sure there's a psychological maybe reason, but why do you think parents feel this get out of jail free card to attack referees because they're wearing a striped jersey and it's just a freebie? Why do you think, what do we do about that?
It's interesting why they do it. It probably varies to the person, but first, I think it's amazing that organizations like this are addressing it, because one reason that it might happen is anytime we may be stressed about something and a situation is out of our control, it comes out with anger a lot of times, or screaming or yelling. I can see a lot of parents that are they want to control this outcome. They want their child to win. They want them to be great. And those things are good motivations, but it probably boils over to a very unhealthy level where they feel that the referee's not going to have any recourse. And so they become kind of a target for their frustrations. It is pretty fascinating when you think about children, right, and adults, and you say out loud what's happening, and you're almost appalled by it, right? Yeah. You have a referee that's either volunteering or not getting paid a lot, that is trying to create an environment so that youth can have an experience where they're developing and growing, and that's not their career. So they, by definition, are not professional. They're going to make mistakes, and they're screamed at by the participants' parents, usually not the players, by the parents. It's really just uncalled for. And I think what's even worse is those youth are going to have to face things in life when it's not going their way, and it's just a bad situation or a bad call or a boss that's not great to them. And I think we could model for them a little bit on how to, hey, you got to move forward.
What type of psychological damage do you think you might see from a child who has one of those parents? I mean, I can only imagine. I fortunately had parents that were pretty laid back, but in my experience coaching, I do know kids who play afraid of mom and dad making a fool of themselves in the crowd, and I can only imagine that it brings some anxiety to them when they know that if they just, they don't get called for, or they get called for a penalty or something, that dad's gonna flip out on the sideline and draw more attention, and that can't be healthy for the kid. And you probably then have to deal with stuff like that later on in life.
Yeah, it's not healthy. I mean, depending on what age the child is, they need certain experiences to develop in a healthy and way, or at least increase the likelihood. And one of those is they hit a stage where they've got to make some choices. They need to make some errors, and they need to try to correct those. And if they are in fear of every mistake is just ridiculed and pointed out and highlighted, it really does kind of stunt their growth a little bit emotionally. It's hard for them to be resilient when other factors come in. But if they're able to kind of process that and work through it and make mistakes and keep growing, it's a great environment to learn that skill that every adult's going to have.
Yeah. Shad, what are your thoughts?
Well, I just think we attach too much meaning to a single game. I mean, do you remember the third or fourth Little League game you ever played?
Yeah.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Hit for the cycle.
Right. I mean, it's like we act like for whatever reason there's something that's going on in the mind and hearts of parents, it seems, by their actions, that if things don't go their child's way, then all is lost and that it's over. And I think if we were to take a step back and to really remember, and we talk about it often, but what is sports all about? Like, why do we want our children to play sports? Why do we want them to participate? And if you're a parent who wants them to participate so they can feel the thrill of winning, you're going to miss some of the major benefits that sports brings into the life of a child. And when they act that way, referees are going to make mistakes, umpires are going to make mistakes, kids are going to make mistakes. And so parents just seem to, I don't know what they're thinking, but I've felt it myself. So when I say this, I have felt when I'm sitting there and I'm watching and I want a certain outcome, I want my child to win so badly. Sometimes I attach a deeper meaning to it. Well, if she wins this match or if they win this dance competition, then it will bring these opportunities and it will bring these abilities or this confidence into their life. And I think that sometimes we just attach a disproportional amount of outcomes to a single game.
Yeah.
Where if we focus on the process, they're going to practice really hard, they're going to learn to work, they're going to learn to fail, they're going to learn to get up and they're going to learn that sometimes it's unfair, sometimes things don't work out. And if our focus is on that and the process and what development could come to our child, instead of wanting to be able, as you talk about often, Dustin, social media sometimes enhances this because a parent wants so badly to post the picture of their kids holding the trophy and my little so-and-so accomplished so much. And they want that so bad that they want that maybe worse than the kids want to win. And so they're
taking that from
they're
me.
taking away my Instagram post, you know, and though they never say that out loud, I really think that that's part of what's going on, that parents attach too much personal value to their kids' accomplishments, and sometimes they just forget what sports is about.
Well, I can tell you what it's doing and what it is doing, and I'll leave this to you. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I see it in I coach football, high school football, and I see it there that we're losing good referees. So if you want to make the situation worse, parents, keep doing what we're doing. Keep driving out those who do want to volunteer their time, who might be, maybe they're not, of course they're not great. I mean, you talked about that. They're not even the professionals are getting yelled at. And we're always booing refs all the time at stuff but you know, if the ones who are at least willing to go and take it and show up and be on time so our kids can have this opportunity, decide, forget this isn't worth the $40, I'm out of here. The outcome's going to be you're either going to get worse referees because you're going to just get any Joe Blow off the street that wants a buck to come and ref, or you're not going to have them. And then you're going to have to cancel games. I know a friend of mine who runs a large baseball league who has said we are having to cancel games this last spring because we just don't have refs. Or we have one umpire instead of two umpires. And when coaches get upset, why don't we have two umpires for this game? Because we don't have two umpires. Right, but honestly, who would want to go through that heckling? Is that a problem? Are you running into a ref shortage?
Yeah, that was one of the catalysts of us starting to evaluate what was going on. Is we had to cancel. I can't remember the exact statistics, but it was like 1,500 games in the previous
1,500.
Yeah, we have about 7,000 games. a season, but all over the state. And then we had to cancel and reschedule about 1,500 games just because we didn't have enough referees for the game. And sometimes that's early enough to give notice to teams, and sometimes that's 2 teams and all their families and friends showing up and then having to leave and not get to play the game. So that's terrible for everybody. So that's exactly what is happening is we've lost some good referees who are experienced, and we're not giving the new referees time to get good. They're just like the players. They need the same opportunity to get better at their craft like players do. And unfortunately, I mean, this is good and bad, but nearly 70% of our referees are 18 or younger. And so that comes with the territory. They're young, they're inexperienced, sometimes immature. And especially if you start yelling at them, I mean, they probably won't take it as well as someone who's 40 and been through some things and knows how to respond to difficult things like that. So we're losing referees, and we're not giving the referees who come into the program enough time to get good, to where that the players will have a better experience, and those referees will then get to a spot that they'll want to continue to do games for us. So it's just bad, it's bad for everybody.
Can I mention something about that? I didn't know that percentage of your refs that are 17 and younger. So, I mean, take that even to another level. Like, we have adults who are verbally abusing other children at the game of their children. And if you turn that table there real quick, I imagine they would not be very happy if someone was doing that to their child,
and
right?
These kids that are reffing those games are probably the kids who need to make a little bit of money so they can buy their cleats to play soccer or to play whatever. Like, these aren't the kids that have it all given to them, right? They're working, and here they come out to try to give back to the sport, make a little bit of money to pay for something that they need, and that's what they have to listen to.
And I think, too, it's sad because the truth of the matter is that a 14-year-old can be persuaded by a mouthy father.
Yeah.
And so here you have a father who's willing to be a jerk, a mother or whoever who's willing to scream and yell and make a kid feel stupid, and they can actually impact the outcome of a game with someone who's that impressionable and start getting some of the calls. And so there's also a level of unfairness to
Taking
that.
advantage of. Like,
When you allow that
bully.
to happen,
Yeah.
when you bully a kid, and you're really, like, going to what you were saying, Sheldon, it's like you are literally bullying a kid to get what you want. Like, that's no better than any bully in a Disney show, right? And that's what's happening. And the truth is, I remember reffing basketball games as a kid and having that dad scream and yell, and you don't want him to scream and yell because it's embarrassing. And so sometimes it does affect the way you call, even though you don't want it to. And I just think that to not put up with that, for your organization to say it's not just a matter of kids not being bullied, but it's also a matter of creating a fair playing field, where the least mouthy kids aren't at a disadvantage, or parents of kids aren't at a disadvantage to the ones who are willing to scream and yell.
Well, and referees, I've talked to referees that have the opposite effect. So there are referees who can be bullied and intimidated, and a coach can get their way. And I've talked to referees who, as soon as that happens, they dig their heels in and they go the opposite way. And they've admitted to me that they will call the game against that team or coach because they don't like what the coach is saying, or they don't like what the parents are saying. So it's unfair on both, can be on both sides.
It affects the kids.
It affects the kids' experience, we love our referees and we provide opportunities for our referees as well, but this ultimately is for our soccer players. We want our kids to have a place to play where they can learn the game, love the game, grow in the game, and it just can't happen without a safe environment for the referees.
Well, and it's been my experience, both when playing and as a coach, that if I have an umpire who I feel like is missing some calls for me, it's pretty likely he's doing the same thing for the other team too, right? So I have been in games in high school and in college where I'm pitching, and I've been given calls, strikes that I know were 2 inches outside. And at that point, I wasn't screaming and yelling, right? And I was grateful that I got the call. So if he's calling the ball on me, he's probably calling on the other pitcher as well. In the football game, there's going to be holding penalties that we're going to get, and there's probably going to be several that we got away with, or that the other team didn't do and got called on. It usually works itself out. And so for parents who are upset at that ref, he keeps missing those calls, I promise you he's not just missing them for your team. Right, and if it's at the end of the game and it's the play that ends up deciding the last score or whatever of the game, and you want to, it's a 50-50 call, it's happening fast. That's where you have to be the adult. Like, you have to be the adult, and realize that sometimes you saw it one way, but is it possible that you were wrong? Maybe I guarantee your view behind the chain link fence wasn't as good as his view, and so. And regardless, whether you're right or wrong on the decision, what are you teaching your son or daughter when we get in the car with them and we say, hey, son, the only reason you lost that game is because that referee's no good. We just taught our son that the reason you lost is somebody else's fault. So we can't, as parents, wonder why someday when our son or daughter doesn't get a job that they wanted or doesn't get, included to some school they applied for, and they come home and say, well, Mom and Dad, it's the coach's fault, it's the boss's fault, it's the government's fault, it's whoever's fault, right? Because you've raised them to think it's everybody else's fault when they lose a game, instead of saying, hey, you can control your effort and your attitude. Maybe the call was missed, but are we going to worry about it all night, or are we going to move on and enjoy the rest of the night? It's a game. It really is not going to make, you're going to forget about it in a couple weeks or months from now. But I tell you what, you won't forget when Dad's out there screaming and yelling and making a fool of himself. And by the way, moms and dads, somebody's probably getting a video of that. So you're going to have to explain that.
Yep.
Yeah, and you might find yourself trending on Twitter for being such a fool. But yeah, we've got to do something about it. It's not a problem that just came up, but I do believe, and you're validating this, that it's getting worse. Yeah. And in your field, you're seeing more mental health issues. Yeah. And I'm guessing it's in large part because of not athlete or not, tell me if I'm wrong on this, because of some of the pressure that parents are putting on kids.
Yeah, it definitely can be. And with youth sports, man, if there's ever an environment when we can just make it an environment that is going to increase the likelihood that they're developing emotionally and physically and all that, that's the environment, right? Life's already pretty tough.
Yeah. We
could create a great environment, a competitive environment where they play hard, but they can play safe and everyone be safe, and that's we could do that.
Let's not make sports something that adds to a kid's anxiety or adds to their depression or adds to their. Let's let that be some sort of a release for the kids, because that's what it should be. Mm-hmm. Sheldon, Shad, I'm going to give you the final words on this. What's the takeaway from this? What do you think we can do as all of us as parents and coaches? What can we do? And then we'll wrap it up.
Well, I've been thinking a couple of thoughts as we go along. Well, first of all, one takeaway is it's just wonderful to have leaders of organizations who are willing to take action that's not popular but is needed. Yeah. And so, kudos to you and your group, because I could see kids benefiting from that, and you're a wonderful organization. We love working with you. Those kids down in ODP and other things, other groups that we've met with are just incredible, and so it says a lot about your organization. I think that I like picturing all outcomes, and let me tell you what I mean by that. So you scream and you berate a kid, a 15, 16, 17-year-old referee, and imagine that kid going home. So you won the game, your team won, and you had a role in it even because you're a jerk, right? And so your kid gets his trophy. But I like to imagine, okay, so now imagine that kid going home, walking in his front door, and having a parent say, how'd it go? And if you're the reason that kid would bust into tears, or that kid would be like, I don't know if I'm going to do it again, Mom. I don't know if I'm going to do it again, Dad. We have to take a step back and think about what we're doing to people. And I really think there is a disconnect. We would never walk up to someone in a grocery store like you began this podcast with, Dustin. If you wouldn't walk up to someone in a grocery store or a restaurant and just yell at them, why are we doing it to these other kids who are, you wouldn't yell at a checker like that. You wouldn't yell at a bag boy. You wouldn't yell at someone at McDonald's, a 60-year-old who's trying to earn some money. If you have that disconnect in your mind, if any of us have that at all, where we think it's ever okay to bully, as you talked about, Sheldon, an adult or a child, we need to check ourselves. Yeah. And I think that when we do, we give our kids excuses. And like we said in one of our blog posts, what we'll find is our kids have a crappy life with great excuses for it, because that's the way we've raised them. But if we, you know what I'm talking about. Just everything that happens to me is because of this, because of this, because of this. We've trained them that because everything that happens in a soccer game, well, that's because of this. Well, that's because of this. Well, that's because of this. Well, the truth of the matter is, your life is crappy, but you just have a really, really good excuse for a crappy life. I would rather have my kids have a good life and learn to overcome stuff. And so just the takeaway for me is remembering what sports are about, creating those attributes that will create a wonderful life, and not getting caught up and act like a ridiculous because we care so much about the outcome of a child's sporting event.
Well, athletes, parents, let's all do better. And Brian, keep up the work with the soccer organization. Keep fighting the fight. Eyes up, do the work.
This has been the Sportlight podcast from Especially for Athletes, sponsored by Coca-Cola. You can learn more about Especially for Athletes by visiting the website at especiallyforathletes.org. You can also learn more about the book, The Sportlight, by Shad Martin and Dustin Smith at especiallyforathletes.org/book.